So how did you pick your topic?
I focused on small groups and academic discussions because I noticed in my student teaching placement that whenever I would ask my students to talk amongst themselves about the content, they wouldn't or they would not know how to speak appropriately in a school setting. So then in class, we focused on what we cared about and then why we cared about it. So if I wanted my students to be better speakers in a small group setting, why did I want that to happen so much? So I figured out what was the problem I was seeing and how I could possibly fix it. So I narrowed it down by incorporating integral roles in a small group to help promote academic discussion.
Well, to start, I teach math. During this time, I was doing 7th grade math.
And what did you want to focus on? What was a problem you saw?
The problem I saw in my class was I noticed I had a lot of really high kids and I had a lot of really low kids. And I didn't really know. The high kids were getting bored. The low kids were just like swimming in just a bunch of work that I didn't really know what to do with. So I was trying to find a way to support the lower students, but also challenge those higher students kind of at the same time. Because I knew I didn't want people to be bored in class. I wanted everybody to have something to do. So I limited it down to how do I support them. I can use maybe a graphic organizer because graphic organizers, they can kind of express what they're thinking. Usually what I notice in the math class is that anytime I ask them to write out something, they were like, oh, cool, finally it's English class again. So I get to write something. So they were like more willing to write stuff out in sentences, which is what I wanted. So if I use a KWL chart, I noticed that my lower students were actually writing things down. They didn't go as deep into the knowledge, but that's kind of where they were at, so I could start with that. And then I noticed that the higher students were writing a lot, and they were really, really going into depth of whether they understood the concept at all, and like why they didn't, why they did. But I found that it did at least provide an avenue to support the lower kids by giving them an opportunity to express what they're thinking and what they're understanding and what they don't know. It also gave the higher students a chance to express like more in detail of what they're struggling with still and what they were really understanding and why.
So how did you come up with your intervention?
So I came
graphic organizer.
Because I knew at first I was like, I'm going to do group roles. But I was having a hard time just with the situation I was in at my school site, what my mentor wanted me to do and what she didn't want me to do. She wanted to keep them in pairs, which was hard to do, like, group roles with that. I could have done it, but I felt like implementing something that was more individual, so really focusing on, because I wanted to give attention to like the individual students, so like the individual lower student who was really struggling, or the individual really high student who was just sitting there twiddling his thumbs the whole class because he was bored. So I felt like the KWL chart was a better avenue to get them to like individually tell me like, what are you struggling with? Not what is your partner struggling with, but what are you having a hard time with, as opposed to maybe the person sitting next to you.
I remember we had one class where we were supposed to come in with our inquiry topic, and it was, at this point, it was supposed to have already been more specific at one time. So we knew that we had a topic and it needed to be more specific. And when I was in my mini PLC, where we were all focused on the same general idea, so we were focused on small group work with the gained for academic discussion, we just did it in a slightly different way. But I explained what my topic was, why I cared about it, how I proposed to see if maybe my intervention helped, and my peers just listened to me. And then at the end, they told me, well, this is a question I have. This is something I'm thinking about. What if you added this? So their own perspective helped me fully understand the holes in something that I just automatically thought everybody would understand because it's my own thinking. So they kind of filled in the gaps that I was leaving out. So that made my question even more specific, which was good.
Anything else you did?
My PLC didn't help me so much in my wondering. It helped me more so when we were actually reviewing the data. I was actually in a PLC with Beth, and I looked at my KWL charts, and I was convinced that they didn't take them seriously or the results were insufficient. But I just wasn't looking at it through the right lens. And she pointed out that maybe it was just an error on how I presented it or a misinterpretation, because there was effort in filling out the charts. It just seems like they misunderstood what I was looking for, and I had the opportunity to do another round of KWL charts after meeting with my PLC with better modeling on what I was looking for within the charts themselves. And I was trying to get them to organize their thoughts, but they interpreted the KWL charts as like an opportunity for them to just practice procedural fluency, or just completely misunderstood how to film out.
I have a similar. With my KWL, I kind of thought the same thing, where I was like, oh, I got nothing out of this. They completely missed the point of what I'm doing here. Probably on my part of not modeling it right, of what exactly I wanted them to show. But my PLC kind of helped me with like really sorting through of like what type of information am I getting from each of the kids. So they kind of helped me with sorting through, okay, maybe I need to change my inquiry to be focus a little bit more on what information they're giving me as opposed to how much they're giving me. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thinking about collecting data, what types of data did you all collect?
I collected for mine.
And why?
Yeah. So I was focused on the academic discussion and how well a small group can speak and build off of each other. So one of the pieces was a survey about how reflecting on themselves, thinking how well did I perform in the small group academic discussion in Miss Ellis's class today, and also how well did your peers in your small group perform and why. So it wasn't a quantitative survey, it was qualitative data. And then the other thing I collected was my own field notes with videos. So I wanted to record and write down how the small groups were participating, but I wanted to do it as authentically as possible, so I would hide cameras so my students didn't know when they were being filmed. And then the last piece of data I took was a graphic organizer of how well they set up to that to the academic discussion, and because I had them write certain things and phrases they would say and where their thinking was to see if that would transition for everybody.
So I collected the actual KWL chart. What information did they put on it? I also did a survey of, I think there were 2 questions on it. One said, how did this KWL chart help you organize your thoughts? So were you able to kind of say, oh, I knew this and I learned this, and put them in the appropriate column? And then one question was, or something along the lines of, how did this chart help you think of the more conceptual information that you know about this chapter? And I noticed that a lot of my higher students were able to understand what that question was asking, and a lot of my lower students didn't, which was good information to get. And then my last thing was I compared all of it with a worksheet that they did for homework in relation to the concept that was on the KWL chart. So I compared that worksheet, how well they did with the worksheet, compared to what they wrote on the KWL chart. So I had some students said, oh, I really understand how to find surface area and volume. And then their worksheet showed otherwise. Or I had people say, I have no idea what surface area even means, but they could do all the procedural skills. So that kind of helped me sort my data also by cross-examining.
Okay, big question now. Truth answer too.
Oh, God.
Do you have you used what you learned in this research stream?
I think it was like a stepping stone for me to take the big first step in teaching, for understanding what I want to do with my inquiry and teaching. I'm still kind of in the weeds with teaching, so I haven't had the time to really fully explore my inquiry again. But next year I want to kind of try to just work on my classroom structure and see how I can better support my students with, again, conceptual understanding and, again, group work. So it's just my first run through, and I'm really happy I did it with the support of UCI and not on my own, so people could give me feedback on what I was doing instead of me just blindly calling all the shots.
I definitely think about my research inquiry every single day because I picked something that I really cared about and something that I really want to see vast improvement, because it's what I think is really important for an English classroom. So when I was doing it during student teaching, I had a lot more time to prep the activity and to plan what I was going to collect, and then more time to sort through all the data, which was nice. Now I don't have as much time, but I know that I will in the future because it's just since I'm such a brand new teacher. But it is always in the back of my head whenever I ask my students to talk amongst yourselves about this topic, or what do you think, or write on this paper. I'm always looking to give every single person a certain kind of role because I know that's what they need, and to always ask them to reflect on it and to have them be prepared. I'm thinking about it all the time, but that's only because it's something, my inquiry was something I really cared about.